What the hell are you doing here, you lazy woman? Alexander Harrington's voice thundered through his opulent Manhattan penthouse like a storm unleashed, his face contorted in rage as he burst into the kitchen. There stood Eleanor Thompson, the 55-year-old black maid from Georgia he'd employed for 15 years, a resilient fighter inspired by Dorothy Bolden's civil rights legacy. Arriving just 10 minutes late, her coat still damp from rushing her sick granddaughter to the hospital. But Alexander, the 50-year-old billionaire real estate tycoon blinded by prejudice in power, saw only incompetence. "You're just like the rest of them, lazy and unreliable," he snarled, firing her on the spot in front of the stunned staff, hurling her final paycheck at her feet like worthless scraps. The injustice burned, scattering bills across the marble floor as Eleanor gathered them with unyielding dignity, whispering, "You'll regret not listening, sir." Yet something unimaginable lurked, a shocking family secret from his mother that would shatter his world, expose hidden blood ties, and force a redemption that changes everything. If this injustice hits home, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment on your city below. Let's build a community that listens. The penthouse kitchen gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, marble counters spotless, copper pots hanging like silent witnesses. Alexander Harrington stormed in, his Italian leather shoes clicking sharply against the floor, each step a declaration of dominance. His tie was slightly askew from a grueling board meeting downtown, where he'd just closed a multi-million-dollar deal on a luxury high-rise in Midtown. But victory tasted sour now, curdled by the ticking clock on his Rolex, 7:10 a.m. 10 minutes passed when breakfast should have been ready. Eleanor's back was turned as she hurried to plate the eggs, her uniform crisp despite the subway delays and the ache in her bones from a sleepless night at the hospital. At 55, she carried the weight of Georgia's red clay in her veins, her dark skin etched with faint lines from years of scrubbing floors and fighting quieter battles. She'd started young, inspired by stories of Dorothy Bolden, the Atlanta maid who'd risen to organize thousands in the civil rights era, demanding fair wages and dignity for domestic workers. Eleanor had marched in her own small ways back home, but in New York, survival meant silence, endurance. Today, though, her granddaughter's fever had spiked at dawn, forcing a detour to the ER. She hadn't called in. Alexander didn't tolerate excuses. He slammed his briefcase on the island, the thud echoing like a gunshot. "Where the hell is my coffee?" His voice boomed, deep and commanding, the kind that silenced boardrooms. The other staff, a young sous chef and a gardener lingering with his tools, froze in the doorway, eyes darting to the floor. Alexander's face flushed red, veins bulging at his temples, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. In his mind, a whirlwind raged. Always late, these people. Unreliable. I built this empire on precision. Why can't they? Eleanor turned slowly, her hands steady as she set down the spatula. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, met his. "Sir, Don't you dare," he cut her off, stepping closer, his 6-foot frame towering over her. The air thickened with tension, the scent of burnt toast mingling with his expensive cologne. 10 minutes late? Again? In my house, that's theft. Stealing my time. His words sliced like knives, laced with the unspoken prejudices he'd inherited from a lineage of old money. Whispers from his father's generation about those kinds who didn't know their place. The staff shifted uncomfortably, the sous chef's face paling as he gripped the doorframe. Alexander didn't notice. His focus narrowed to Eleanor, her calm demeanor only fueling his rage. How dare she look at me like that? Like she has the right. He leaned in, voice dropping to a venomous growl that filled the room. "You're lazy, just like the rest of them, like every black person I've ever had to deal with. Always excuses, never results. You're fired. Pack your crap and get out of my sight. Now!" The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous, echoing off the high ceilings. Eleanor's lips parted slightly, a flicker of pain crossing her features. Not from the insult, but from the public humiliation, the staff's averted gazes burning like spotlights. Inside, her thoughts raced. 15 years, wiping his spills, raising his forgotten appointments, listening to his rants without a word. And this, for saving a child's life? Dorothy would say, stand tall. Don't let them break you. But she said nothing yet, her chin lifting just a fraction, her hands clasping at her sides to hide the tremble. Alexander's chest heaved, satisfaction flickering in his eyes for a split second. The power rush of assertion, of putting someone in their place, but beneath it, a nagging whisper stirred, unacknowledged. Was that too far? No. She deserved it. Reliability is everything. He pointed to the door, his finger jabbing like an accusation. I said, get out of here now. Don't make me call security. The gardener muttered something under his breath, a low rumble of disapproval, but Alexander shot him a glare that silenced it. The kitchen felt smaller now, the opulence mocking, the crystal chandelier above casting fractured light on Eleanor's face, highlighting the quiet strength in her posture. She didn't crumple, didn't beg. Instead, she smoothed her apron one last time, her movements deliberate, graceful even in defeat. In Alexander's mind, the storm subsided slightly, replaced by a smug finality. Good riddance. I'll hire someone better, someone who knows punctuality. But as Eleanor moved toward her locker in the adjacent pantry, the weight of his words settled like lead in his gut, though he pushed it down, turning back to his phone as if nothing had happened. The staff exchanged glances, the air thick with unspoken outrage, the injustice palpable, a wound freshly opened in the heart of luxury. Eleanor's steps were measured, her back straight, each one a testament to resilience forged in harder times. She thought of Bolden again, how she'd started as a child maid in 1933, facing worse than this, building a union that changed lives. This isn't the end, Eleanor told herself. It's just another fight. But the sting of the racial slur lingered, a fresh scar on old wounds, as the penthouse door loomed ahead. Alexander watched her go, his fists unclenching slowly. A fleeting doubt crept in. What if she had a reason? He shook it off, barking at the sous chef to finish breakfast. The room resumed its motions, but the silence was deafening, the echo of his cruelty reverberating in every corner. The air in the penthouse kitchen turned thick, almost suffocating, as Alexander's words lingered like smoke from a fired gun. Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in a quiet resolve that only deepened the lines around them. Lines earned from decades of holding her tongue, of turning the other cheek in homes like this one. She opened her mouth again, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Sir, my granddaughter. She was at the hospital this morning. Fever spiked high. I had to. Alexander's laugh barked out, sharp and dismissive, cutting her off like a blade through silk. He spun on his heel, yanking open a drawer with such force that utensils clattered inside, spilling onto the counter. His hands, manicured and ringed with gold, rifled through papers until he found it. Her final paycheck envelope, crisp and official, stamped with the Harrington Enterprises logo. The staff in the doorway shifted uneasily, the sous chef's knuckles whitening on the doorframe, the gardener's jaw tightening as if biting back words. But no one intervened. In this world, power was a shield, and Alexander wielded it like a weapon. He held the envelope up, waving it like a trophy, his eyes gleaming with a mix of triumph and disdain. Excuses, always excuses. Hospital? Likely story. These people think they can play me. The thought fueled him, pushing aside any flicker of doubt. He stepped closer to Eleanor, invading her space, the scent of his aftershave clashing with the faint hospital antiseptic still clinging to her clothes. Her breath caught, but she didn't back away, her feet planted firm on the cold marble, hands now folded in front of her apron like a shield. With a flick of his wrist, he tore open the envelope, bills fluttering out slightly before he crushed them in his fist. This is what you get, your severance for wasting my time. His voice dripped sarcasm, each word a jab. Then in a motion swift and deliberate, he hurled the crumpled money straight at her face. The bills exploded against her cheek like confetti from a cruel parade, some sticking to her skin from the sweat of her rushed morning, others tumbling to the floor in a chaotic scatter. One $20 note caught on her collar, hanging there mockingly. The impact stung, a sharp slap without the hand, but it was the humiliation that burned deepest. the public degradation in front of witnesses who averted their eyes, pretending not to see. Eleanor's cheek flushed red where the paper had hit, a brief wince crossing her features before she masked it with that unyielding calm. Inside, her mind reeled. 15 years of loyalty reduced to this? Thrown away like trash. Dorothy faced whips and dogs in the streets of Atlanta. This is just paper. Stand tall. She didn't rub her face, didn't stoop immediately to pick up the money. Instead, she met his gaze, her dark eyes holding a depth he couldn't fathom. Echoes of marches in the South, of union meetings in church basements where women like her had demanded respect. Alexander's chest rose and fell rapidly, adrenaline surging through him like electricity. He felt a twisted rush, the satisfaction of control reasserted, but beneath it, a sour note twisted in his gut. Why doesn't she react? Cry, beg, something. He pointed to the pantry where her locker sat, his finger trembling slightly from the exertion. Don't even think about taking anything that's not yours. Your coat, your bag, get them and go. No personal items left behind. I don't want any trace of you in my home. His words were final, a decree from on high, ignoring her plea about the granddaughter entirely, as if her life outside these walls didn't exist. The sous chef finally moved, stepping forward hesitantly. Mr. Harrington, perhaps, but Alexander whirled on him, eyes blazing. Stay out of it, or you're next. The young man retreated, face ashen, the gardener muttering a curse under his breath. Eleanor, meanwhile, knelt slowly to gather the scattered bills, her movements precise, deliberate, each bill folded neatly into her pocket, her fingers steady despite the tremor she hid. The money amounted to a pittance, barely enough for a week's rent in her cramped Harlem apartment, let alone the mounting hospital bills. As she rose, she smoothed her uniform one last time, the fabric whispering against her skin. In Alexander's mind, the scene played out like a victory. Problem solved. The agency will send someone new by noon. But as he watched her head to the pantry, a nagging unease crept in, unbidden. What if the hospital story is true? No, can't be. She's just manipulating. He crossed his arms, leaning against the counter, his posture screaming authority, but his foot tapped impatiently, betraying the crack in his armor. Eleanor's thoughts turned inward as she opened her locker. No time for tears. Grandbaby needs me strong. This city chews up the weak. I've seen it since I left Georgia. Bolden built a union from nothing. I'll rebuild too. She grabbed her worn coat and threadbare bag, leaving behind a small photo of her family tucked in the back. Unseen, forgotten in the rush. The door to the pantry creaked as she closed it, a final punctuation. Alexander barked one last order as she passed. And don't come back begging. Security will escort you out. He turned away, dismissing her from his world, but the kitchen felt colder now, the scattered remnants of breakfast a testament to the disruption. Eleanor paused at the threshold, her bag slung over her shoulder, the weight of injustice pressing down like an invisible load. She didn't look back, her steps echoing down the hall toward the elevator, each one carrying her further into uncertainty. Eviction notices waiting at home, the streets of New York looming as her next bed. The staff dispersed quietly, whispers starting in their wake, but Alexander ignored them, pouring himself coffee with shaking hands. The triumph faded, replaced by a hollow echo, though he buried it deep. Outside, snow began to fall heavier, blanketing the city in white. But for Eleanor, the cold was just beginning. The scattered bills lay at Eleanor's feet like fallen leaves in a storm, each one a silent testament to her worth in Alexander's eyes. Mere paper, disposable. She stood there for a beat, the penthouse kitchen frozen in time. The sous chef's breath held, the gardener's fists clenched at his sides. Alexander loomed, arms crossed, his posture a wall of unyielding authority, waiting for the breakdown, the plea that would affirm his power. But Eleanor didn't crumble. Her face remained composed, a mask of quiet steel, her lips pressed into a thin line that hid the storm within. No tears welled, no sobs escaped. Instead, she bent at the waist with deliberate grace, her knees creaking faintly from years of labor, and picked up each bill one by one. Her fingers, calloused from scrubbing endless surfaces, folded the money neatly, tucking it into her apron pocket without a word at first. Alexander watched, his brow furrowing slightly, the expected victory souring in his mouth. Why isn't she fighting back? Begging? These people always do. The thought flickered, laced with confusion, but he shoved it aside, his jaw tightening further. The air hummed with tension, the chandelier's light catching the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead, betraying the effort it took to maintain his rage. Eleanor straightened, her back ramrod straight, shoulders squared as if facing a judge in a courtroom of marble and gold. She met his gaze directly now, her dark eyes holding depths he couldn't penetrate. Echoes of southern marches, of standing firm against horses and dogs in the 1960s, inspired by women like Dorothy Bolden, who turned domestic drudgery into defiance. Inside, her mind steadied. He thinks this breaks me. I've buried a husband, raised kids on scraps, fought for unions that gave us nothing but hope. This is just another door closing. No quiver in her voice, no tremble in her stance. She was a pillar, unbowed. Alexander shifted his weight, the silence stretching like a taut wire. The staff lingered in the periphery, shadows against the pristine walls, their presence a chorus of unspoken judgment. He cleared his throat, masking unease with bluster. Well, what are you waiting for? Get out before I have you thrown out. His words aimed to sting, but they bounced off her like rain on stone. Eleanor's response came soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the room like a prophecy etched in stone. She tilted her head slightly, her voice steady and laced with quiet certainty. You'll regret this, sir, not because of me, but because you never listened. Like so many powerful men before you. The words hung there, heavy with foreshadowing, a subtle curse wrapped in truth. They echoed in Alexander's ears, stirring something primal, a chill that he dismissed as the draft from the open pantry door. Regret? Me? Absurd. She's just bitter. But his pulse quickened, unbidden, his hands flexing at his sides. She didn't wait for a retort. With head held high, chin lifted in defiance of gravity and circumstance, Eleanor turned toward the hallway leading to the service elevator. Her steps were measured, deliberate, each click of her sensible shoes against the floor, a drumbeat of dignity. The bag over her shoulders sagged with the weight of her few possessions, but her posture didn't. No slump, no hurried scramble. She walked as if owning the space, her silhouette framed by the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows that seemed to accuse. The staff parted for her, the sous chef murmuring a soft, "Take care, Miss Eleanor," under his breath, his eyes downcast in shame. The gardener nodded subtly, a flicker of respect in his grizzled features. Alexander stood rooted, watching her retreat, his arms dropping to his sides as the adrenaline ebbed. The kitchen, once a hub of controlled chaos, fell into a dreadful hush, the kind that amplifies every creak of settling wood, every distant hum of the city below. No clatter of pots, no rush of water, just the void left by her presence, a palpable absence that made the opulence feel empty, hollow. Eleanor's mind raced as she reached the elevator, the doors sliding open with a soft ding that mocked the drama. Grandbaby's waiting. Bills don't pay themselves. He'll learn. Power blinds, but truth cuts through. She stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby, her reflection in the mirrored walls showing a woman unbroken, eyes fierce with resolve. The doors closed, sealing her exit, and the penthouse exhaled a collective breath it hadn't known it was holding. Back in the kitchen, Alexander turned away, barking at the sous chef to clean this mess up. But his voice lacked its earlier bite, cracking slightly on the last word. He poured coffee with unsteady hands, the liquid sloshing over the rim, burning his fingers. He cursed under his breath, but the pain was nothing compared to the gnawing unease settling in his chest. The silence pressed in, oppressive, the scattered utensils on the counter, a chaotic reminder of his outburst. The gardener slipped out quietly, shaking his head, while the sous chef scrubbed furiously, avoiding eye contact. Alexander retreated to his study, the door clicking shut behind him, but the quiet followed, amplifying his thoughts. Just a maid, replaceable. Why does it feel wrong? He stared out at the New York skyline, the snow now swirling thicker, blanketing the world in white oblivion. But inside, the storm he'd unleashed refused to settle, the prophecy echoing faintly, a whisper of impending regret. The penthouse, for all its grandeur, felt smaller, colder, a tomb of silence where injustice had taken root. Eleanor emerged into the lobby, the doorman offering a sympathetic nod as she pushed through the revolving doors into the biting wind. Her breath fogged the air, but her head remained high, steps purposeful toward the subway. The city swallowed her, indifferent, but she carried her dignity like armor, unbreakable. Back upstairs, the silence lingered, a ghost in the halls, waiting to haunt. The study door clicked shut behind Alexander, sealing him in a cocoon of dim light and heavy shadows. He flicked off the overhead lamp, leaving only the desk light to cast a harsh glow on the mahogany surface, illuminating scattered papers from his morning rush. His footsteps dragged across the Persian rug, each one heavier than the last, as he collapsed into the leather armchair. The seat creaked under his weight, the sound amplified in the sudden quiet, a far cry from the kitchen's earlier chaos. His hand reached for the decanter automatically, pouring scotch into a crystal tumbler with a clink that echoed like accusation. The amber liquid swirled as he lifted it, but he set it down untouched, his fingers lingering on the glass, tracing the etched patterns absent-mindedly. The room smelled of aged wood and faint cigar smoke from last night's deal celebration, a reminder of triumphs that now felt hollow. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, New York's skyline twinkled indifferently, skyscrapers piercing the snowy dawn like indifferent sentinels. Alexander's gaze drifted to his desk, landing on the crumpled paper he'd snatched from the kitchen floor moments ago, the hospital bill that had slipped from Eleanor's coat during the confrontation. He hadn't meant to pick it up. It was instinct, a reflexive grab as he stormed out. Now it lay there, edges frayed, ink smudged from her grip. He smoothed it out with trembling fingers, the crinkle of paper loud in the silence. The header read, Harlem General Hospital, dated that very morning. Emergency visit for a 5-year-old girl, fever complication, outstanding balance $2,500. Note scrawled in the margin, granddaughter, urgent care needed. His breath hitched, eyes locking on the details, the patient's name matching Eleanor's last, the timestamp aligning with her lateness. The room spun slightly, or perhaps it was just his head, as he pressed the heels of his palms into his eyes, rubbing hard enough to see stars. Just a piece of paper means nothing. But the lie rang false even in his thoughts. His shoulders slumped, the tailored suit jacket suddenly feeling like a straitjacket, constricting his chest. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, fingers digging into his temples, massaging in slow, painful circles. The pressure built behind his eyes, a throbbing ache that mirrored the knot in his gut. Flashes assaulted him. Eleanor's face as the money hit her, the quiet dignity in her eyes, the way she'd knelt without a whimper. He grimaced, his reflection in the darkened window showing a man he barely recognized. Lines deeper, mouth twisted in self-loathing. 15 years. She never complained. Polished every damn trophy in this room. His hand slammed the desk lightly, the tumbler jumping, scotch sloshing over the rim onto the bill. He wiped it hastily, smearing the ink further, as if erasing the evidence could undo the morning. The chair groaned as he pushed back, standing abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. His loafers sank into the rug, muffling his steps, but the rhythm pounded in his ears. Pace, turn, pace. He stopped at the window, forehead pressing against the cold glass, breath fogging the pain. The snow outside fell thicker now, blanketing Central Park below in white, but it offered no peace. His mind replayed her words, "You'll regret this, because you never listened." A low groan escaped his lips, fingers raking through his salt and pepper hair, pulling at the roots as if to yank out the guilt. He returned to the desk, staring at the bill again, turning it over in his hands. The reverse side had a handwritten note, "Payment plan denied. Eviction, if not settled by week's end." His stomach twisted, a wave of nausea rising. She was late because of this? A kid's fever? And He trailed off in thought, collapsing back into the chair, head in hands. His thumbs pressed into his temples harder, circling with increasing force, the skin reddening under the assault. Disgust welled up, hot and bitter, directed inward, at the man who'd built an empire on ruthlessness, blind to the human cost. The tumbler caught his eye again, and he grabbed it, downing the scotch in one gulp, the burn scorching his throat but doing nothing to numb the edge. He set it down too hard, the base cracking slightly against the wood. Pathetic, firing her like that, in front of everyone. Racial slur. Christ, what was I thinking? His face contorted, a grimace of revulsion, as he rubbed his temples once more, the motion frantic now, nails digging in. The room's shadows seemed to close in, the silence mocking him, broken only by his ragged breathing. He flipped open his laptop, the screen's blue light harsh on his face, but he didn't type. Just stared at the blank search bar. The agency can replace her. Easy. But his fingers hovered, unmoving. Instead, he pushed the laptop away, leaning back, eyes closing against the onslaught of images. Eleanor's steady gaze, the bills scattering, her prophetic whisper. His hand rose to his forehead again, pressing hard, as if to squeeze out the memory. Sweat beaded on his brow despite the chill, his shirt clinging uncomfortably. A clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, each second a hammer blow. Alexander's pacing resumed, slower now, his hand never leaving his temple, rubbing in endless circles. The bill lay accusingly on the desk, a beacon in the dim light. Blind. That's what she meant. Blind to everything but my schedule. Self-hatred surged, his free hand clenching into a fist, knuckles whitening. He stopped at the mirror on the far wall, staring at his reflection. The powerful tycoon, now a man unraveling. His fingers dug deeper into his skin, the pain of fleeting distraction from the deeper wound. The phone buzzed on the desk, his mother's number flashing. He ignored it, sinking back into the chair, the bill crumpling in his grip. The rubbing intensified, his face a mask of loathing, the room's darkness mirroring the void opening inside him. No escape, no denial. The evidence stared back, unblinking. The study's door creaked open softly, a sliver of light slicing through the dimness, like a hesitant intruder. Alexander's eyes snapped open, his body tensing in the armchair. The hospital bill still clutched in his fist like a guilty secret. Footsteps approached, measured, familiar. The polished shoes of Harold, the longtime butler, a 60-year-old man with silver hair and a demeanor as unflappable as the penthouse's marble floors. Harold had been with the family for decades, a silent observer to tantrums and triumphs, his black uniform blending into the shadows like he was part of the furniture. Alexander straightened slightly, his hand dropping the bill to the desk with a soft thud, but he didn't look up immediately. The scotch's burn lingered in his throat, a fire that did nothing to warm the chill settling in his bones. Harold paused at the threshold, tray in hand, fresh coffee steaming from a porcelain cup, a subtle offering in the wake of chaos. The aroma wafted in, cutting through the study's stale air, but Alexander's stomach churned at the scent. Not now. Leave me alone. His thoughts barked the command, but his lips stayed sealed, jaw locked tight. Harold cleared his throat gently, the sound polite yet insistent. Sir, if I may, about Eleanor. His voice was low, accented with a faint British clip from his early years abroad, carrying the weight of years served. He set the tray down on a side table, the clink of cup on saucer echoing faintly, then straightened, hands clasping behind his back. Alexander's gaze finally lifted, meeting Harold's steady eyes that held no judgment, only quiet knowing. The butler's face remained neutral, wrinkles deepening around his mouth, but his posture spoke volumes, concern wrapped in deference. Alexander waved a hand dismissively, but it lacked conviction, his fingers trembling midair before dropping to his lap. Not now, Harold. She's gone. The agency will handle it. The words came out gruff, forced, but inside curiosity gnawed. What does he know? Why bring her up? He shifted in the chair, the leather creaking, his foot tapping an erratic rhythm on the rug. The bill mocked him from the desk, its creases like accusatory fingers pointing back. Harold didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice softening further, almost paternal. Tua Ong Ba Eleanor. She often stayed late because of her granddaughter. The child has been ill, fevers, hospital visits. This morning was no different. She mentioned it in passing last week, but you were occupied. He paused, choosing words like fragile china, his eyes flicking to the bill briefly before returning to Alexander's face. Alexander's breath caught, his chest tightening as if squeezed by an invisible vice. Staying late? For a kid? And I... The thought trailed into a void, guilt flooding in like dark water. Harold continued, his tone even, recounting without embellishment. She once shared stories from her youth in Georgia, fighting in the civil rights movement, inspired by Dorothy Bolden. You know, the woman who started as a maid in 1933, organized the National Domestic Workers Union in 1968. Eleanor marched with similar fire, demanding rights for workers like her. She's not one to complain, sir. Endured more than most. The butler's words landed softly, but they pierced, each fact a needle threading through Alexander's defenses. Harold's hands remained clasped, but his fingers twitched slightly, betraying his own unease, the rare crack in his composure. Alexander's mind reeled, images flashing. Eleanor's unflinching eyes during the firing, the money scattering, her prophetic whisper. Civil rights, union fights, and I called her lazy, like the rest of them. Self-disgust surged, hot and unrelenting, his face flushing despite the room's cool air. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping back with a harsh grind, his hand knocking the tumbler off the desk. The glass tumbled, hitting the hardwood floor with a sharp crack, shattering into jagged shards that sparkled under the desk light like broken promises. Scotch pooled outward, soaking into the rug, the sharp scent filling the air, a symbol of his crumbling facade. He stared at the mess, breath ragged, his fists clenching at his sides. Fool. Blind fool. The regret hit like a wave, crashing over him, his knees weakening until he gripped the desk for support. Harold moved forward instinctively, bending to pick up the largest shard, but Alexander waved him off, voice hoarse. Leave it. Just leave. But inside the words echoed. She fought for rights, and I stripped hers away in a tantrum. What kind of man does that? His hand rose to his forehead again, pressing hard, but the pressure offered no relief, only amplified the pounding regret. Harold nodded, retreating a step, but his eyes lingered, soft with unspoken empathy. She was the heart of this place, sir, more than just a maid. He turned toward the door, his steps slow, giving Alexander space to absorb the blow. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing the study once more. But the silence now screamed with Harold's confirmation, the shattered glass a mirror to Alexander's fracturing self-image. Alexander sank back into the chair, shards crunching under his shoe as he shifted. His fingers traced the bill again, the ink now blurred from the spilled scotch, but the truth remained sharp. My granddaughter is sick, stayed late for us, and I threw money at her like garbage. Nausea rose, bile in his throat, his free hand clutching his shirt over his heart as if to steady the erratic beat. The skyline outside blurred through unshed tears. He blinked away furiously. No, not for her. She's replaceable. But the lie crumbled, regret seeping in like the pooling liquor, staining everything. He paced again, avoiding the glass, his mind a torrent. Harold's right. Dorothy Bolden, organized thousands, faced down segregation. Eleanor, part of that legacy? And I reduced her to a slur. His fist slammed the desk, pain shooting up his arm, but it paled against the inner turmoil. He collapsed forward, head in hands, breaths coming in short gasps. The room spun, the shadows lengthening as morning light filtered in weakly. Regret solidified, a weight on his chest, the shattered tumbler glinting accusatorily, his empire's foundation cracking, one unspoken truth at a time. Harold's words replayed, a loop in his head, each repetition deepening the fracture. Alexander's hand trembled as he reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the agency number, but he set it down, unable to dial. What have I done? The question hung, unanswered, as the penthouse's hush enveloped him, the broken glass a stark emblem of his unraveling. The study's clock ticked past noon, each second a relentless drumbeat in Alexander's ears, as he stared at the shattered tumbler on the floor, shards glinting like accusations in the slanted light. His phone lay silent on the desk, ignored calls from his office piling up, board members wondering about the delayed conference call, assistants querying lunch orders. But he couldn't move, couldn't summon the energy to pretend normalcy. Harold's words looped in his mind, intertwining with the hospital bill's stark figures. Eleanor's prophetic whisper weaving through like a thread pulling tighter. Regret, already here. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping back with a groan, his hand sweeping the bill into his pocket as if hiding it could erase the morning. He grabbed his coat from the hall closet, the cashmere heavy on his shoulders, and slipped out the service entrance to avoid questions. The elevator descended smoothly, but his stomach churned with each floor, the mirrored walls reflecting a man disheveled, tie loosened, hair tousled from frantic rubbing. Outside, the snow had eased to a light flurry, but the wind bit sharp, whipping through the canyons of Midtown Manhattan. Alexander hailed a cab, barking, "Harlem! Start at the community center on 125th," to the driver, his voice rough, unfamiliar even to himself. The cab lurched forward, weaving through traffic, horns blaring like distant echoes of his outburst. His mind raced during the ride, fingers drumming on his knee, the bill crinkling in his pocket with every bump. Find her. Apologize? No, just check. Make sure she's not. The thought trailed, unfinished, as guilt clawed deeper. He scrolled through his contacts, dialing the agency again. Voicemail. Damn it, he muttered, slamming the phone down, his fist clenching until knuckles whitened. The driver glanced in the rear view, but Alexander stared out the window, the city blurring into gray streaks. Civil rights fighter? Like Bolden? And I treated her like dirt. Self-loathing surged, his free hand pressing against his chest as if to steady his heart's erratic thump. The cab pulled up to the curb outside a weathered brick building, a faded sign reading, Harlem Community Hub, empowering since 1965. Snow dusted the steps, footprints leading in and out like trails of forgotten stories. Alexander paid with a crumpled 100, waving off change, and stepped out, the cold slapping his face like a rebuke. He hesitated at the door, hand on the handle, peering through the fog glass. Inside, a group of women huddled around a table, laughter mixing with serious tones, discussing rent strikes, labor rights. No Eleanor. His breath fogged the pain further as he pushed inside, the warmth hitting him like a wall, scents of coffee and old books enveloping him. A receptionist, a young woman with braided hair and a name tag reading Mia, looked up from her desk. "Can I help you?" Her tone was polite but wary, eyes narrowing at his expensive coat amid the modest surroundings. Alexander cleared his throat, voice low. "Looking for Eleanor Thompson. She worked, for me. Heard she volunteers here." Mia's expression shifted, guarded. "Eleanor's not in today. Try tomorrow." He pressed, pulling out his wallet as if money could unlock doors, but she shook her head. "Privacy matters here. Good day." Dismissed, he turned away, frustration boiling, but beneath it, determination solidified. Can't stop now. She's out there. He wandered the streets, collar up against the wind, snowflakes melting on his lashes. Hours blurred, asking at a diner, haven't seen her. A shelter, full up, try the park. His loafers soaking through as slush pooled in sidewalks. The neighborhood shifted from bustling avenues to quieter blocks, brownstones lined with bare trees, holiday lights flickering early in the dusk. His phone buzzed. Victoria again. But he silenced it, pocket heavy with the bill. What if she's really suffering? Because of me? The question propelled him, his pace quickening despite the ache in his legs, unused to such exertion. Dusk fell, street lamps buzzing to life, casting orange glows on the accumulating snow. Central Park's edge loomed, benches dotted with huddled figures wrapped in layers against the freeze. Alexander's breath came in invisible puffs as he scanned them, heart pounding. Not from cold, but anticipation laced with dread. One shape caught his eye. A woman on a bench near the Harlem Mere, curled under a thin blanket, her form small against the vast white landscape. He approached slowly, boots crunching snow, the sound intrusive in the quiet. Closer now, he saw the familiar wool coat, frayed at the edges, the one she'd worn that morning. Eleanor lay there, eyes closed, breath shallow in the frigid air, her arms wrapped around a faded photo frame clutched to her chest. The picture showed a smiling family, her, a young girl, an elderly woman, edges worn from frequent handling. Snow dusted her hair, turning it silver, her face pale but composed even in sleep. Nearby, a few homeless men shared a thermos, one glancing up protectively. Alexander's throat tightened, his steps faltering. Homeless? Already? Because I fired her? Guilt crashed over him, knees weakening as he knelt in the snow, coat soaking through. But Eleanor wasn't alone in her vulnerability. Earlier that day, before exhaustion claimed her, she'd stopped at a nearby shelter line, handing out gloves from her bag to a young mother shivering with a baby. "Take these, child. Winter bites hard, but we bite back," she'd said, her voice firm, drawing from Bolden's spirit of solidarity. Even now in repose, her hand extended slightly, as if offering comfort in dreams. The men nodded at Alexander warily. "She helped us earlier, shared her last sandwich." "Who are you?" He ignored them, voice a whisper. "Eleanor." His hand hovered, not touching, the photo's glass cold under his gaze. Regret flooded, tears pricking his eyes as the wind howled. "This is my doing, my blindness." He sat back on his heels, snow seeping in, the discovery of a hammer blow. Value amplified by her unseen strength, helping others amid her own fall. The park's silence enveloped them, the reunion's weight pressing down, as Eleanor stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open to the man who'd cast her out. The snow crunched under Alexander's knees as he knelt beside the park bench, the cold seeping through his trousers like icy fingers gripping his skin. His breath came in visible puffs, mingling with the falling flakes that dusted Eleanor's blanket. She stirred fully now, her eyes fluttering open, widening in recognition, in wariness. The photo frame slipped slightly in her grasp, but she clutched it tighter, pulling the thin wool tighter around her shoulders. The nearby homeless men shifted, one standing protectively, his gloved hand hovering near a makeshift walking stick. Alexander didn't notice them. His world narrowed to Eleanor, her face illuminated by the faint glow of a distant street lamp, shadows playing across her features like ghosts of the morning's confrontation. He swallowed hard, throat dry despite the chill, his hands trembling as he extended his coat toward her. The cashmere fabric, worth more than her month's wages, felt inadequate now, a paltry shield against the storm he'd unleashed, kneeling here like a beggar. Me, Alexander Harrington, on my knees in the snow. The thought twisted in his gut, but he didn't rise. His suit jacket clung dimly to his back, the wind whistling through the park's bare trees, carrying distant city hums that mocked his isolation. Eleanor's gaze held steady, no surprise softening her expression, only a quiet assessment, as if she'd expected this reckoning someday. Alexander's voice cracked on the first word, low and ragged. "Eleanor, I was wrong." He paused, the admission hanging heavy, his eyes dropping to the snow between them before forcing them back up. His posture slumped further, shoulders hunching under the weight of regret. The powerful tycoon reduced to a man stripped bare. Blind. That's what she said, and she was right. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper that the wind nearly stole. "I fired you without listening, threw money at you like you were nothing. But that bill, I found it. Your granddaughter. The hospital. I didn't know. I didn't care to know." The men murmured among themselves, one whispering, "That's the rich guy." But Alexander pressed on, his hands clasping together in supplication, knuckles raw from the cold. "I've been blinded by prejudice, by my own damn ego, Calling you lazy like the rest. God, what a fool. His face contorted, brows furrowing deep, a grimace of self-revulsion pulling at his lips. He rubbed his temples instinctively, the habit from the study returning, fingers pressing hard as if to excavate the shame. 15 years of loyalty, and I spat on it. Unworthy, utterly unworthy. Eleanor's expression softened fractionally, but she didn't speak, her fingers tracing the photo's edge. The family smiles a stark contrast to the scene. Alexander's knees ached from the frozen ground, but he stayed down, voice gaining strength in vulnerability. You didn't deserve that. No one does. I don't deserve your loyalty, your years of service. Please, forgive me. The words tumbled out, raw and unpolished, his eyes glistening now, tears freezing on his lashes. He bowed his head slightly, the gesture of a man in defeat, the wind tousling his hair into disarray. Before Eleanor could respond, tires crunched on the salted path nearby, headlights cutting through the dusk like searchlights. A sleek black town car pulled up, the door opening with a soft click. Victoria Harrington emerged, her fur-trimmed coat billowing in the wind, her 75-year-old frame stepping out with surprising agility. Her silver hair caught the light, her face pale but resolute, lines etched deeper by the cold, or perhaps by the secret she'd carried for decades. She approached swiftly, heels clicking on the pavement, ignoring the snow that soaked her shoes. The homeless men backed away further, sensing the shift, as Victoria's presence filled the space like a matriarch claiming her domain. Alexander looked up, confusion flashing across his wet face. "Mother, how did you—" Victoria waved him silent, her gloved hands steady, eyes locking on Eleanor first with a nod of respect, then turning to her son. Her voice cut through the wind, firm yet trembling at the edges, as if the words had waited lifetimes to escape. "Alexander, it's time. I've hidden this too long." She paused, breath visible, her chin lifting in a mirror of Eleanor's dignity. Alexander rose unsteadily, snow clinging to his knees, his coat forgotten in the drift. Victoria's eyes welled, but she blinked it away, stepping closer to grasp his arm. "Your father, the man I told you about, the one who built this empire, he wasn't your real father." Her voice dropped, intimate yet piercing. "In the 1960s, during the civil rights marches in Georgia, I fell in love with a black activist, a man fighting alongside Dorothy Bolden for workers' rights, marching against segregation. We had you in secret. I married your father to protect you from the hate, the scandals, hid your blood to shield you, but it made you blind, just like it blinded me back then." The revelation slammed into Alexander like a physical blow, his face draining of color, eyes widening in shock. He staggered back a step, hand clutching his chest as if struck, the world tilting. Black? Me? Half. Thoughts fragmented, memories reshuffling, his father's cold distance, Victoria's unexplained trip south, the prejudices he'd echoed without question. His knees buckled again, but he caught himself on the bench, breath ragged, tears flowing freely now. Victoria reached for him, her hand gentle on his shoulder, voice cracking. "I protected you, but at what cost? Face it now, son. See the truth." Eleanor's eyes widened slightly, the photo trembling in her hands, but she remained silent, witnessing the unraveling. The men nearby exchanged glances, one whistling low. Alexander's world shattered further, the snow falling heavier, blanketing the park in hush. My blood, tied to the fight she mentioned? Bolden's era, and I insulted her for it? He turned to Eleanor, voice a broken whisper. I had no idea." Victoria nodded at Eleanor, a silent acknowledgement, as the wind howled on, the confrontation's weight pressing down, secrets spilling like the spilled scotch earlier. Irrevocable, transformative. Alexander's hands shook as he wiped his face, the cold numbing his fingers, but not the fire inside. Victoria stood firm, her revelation hanging in the air, a bridge between past sins and potential redemption. The park's lamps flickered, casting long shadows, as the trio stood frozen in the snowfall, the power dynamics shifting irrevocably under the weight of hidden bloodlines. The park's wind howled sharper now, whipping snow into eddies around the bench where Eleanor sat upright, her blanket slipping to reveal the photo frame still clutched tight. Her eyes flicked between Alexander, kneeling, shattered, tears carving tracks down his reddened cheeks. And Victoria, standing tall despite the cold, her fur coat dusted white, face a mask of long-buried resolve. The homeless men backed further into the shadows, murmuring among themselves, sensing the air thicken with unspoken history. Eleanor's breath steadied, her fingers tracing the photo's glass, the family smiles grounding her amid the whirlwind revelation. Alexander's hands trembled as he gripped the bench's edge for support, his knees sinking deeper into the snow, the chill numbing his legs but sharpening the pain in his chest. Half black, my father, an activist, all these years preaching superiority, blind to my own blood. His mind fractured further, memories of his father's distant stares, Victoria's secretive silences, now snapping into focus like puzzle pieces forced together. He looked up at Eleanor, voice a ragged plea. How do I fix this? Eleanor's gaze softened incrementally, not with pity, but with the weary wisdom of someone who'd faced worse storms. She set the photo aside carefully, pulling the blanket around her shoulders tighter, her movements deliberate, unhurried. The wind tugged at her hair, but she didn't flinch, her posture straightening as if drawing strength from the frozen ground. Forgive? Easy word for him. But conditions? Yes, that's the key. Like Bolden taught, demand change. Don't just accept crumbs. Her eyes met Victoria's, a silent nod passing between them, two women shaped by eras of hidden fights. Victoria stepped closer, her heels sinking into the snow, hand extending to help Alexander rise. But he waved it off, staying knelt, his suit ruined by the slush. Her voice cut through the gusts, steady. You start by listening, son. Eleanor's right. You've been blind, but blood doesn't lie. Your real father marched for justice. It's time you do too. She turned to Eleanor, eyes glistening. I've watched from afar too long. You remind me of the women I knew back then. Strong, unbowed. Eleanor rose slowly, the blanket falling away, revealing her worn coat in the dignity that no weather could strip. She stood over Alexander now, the power inversion stark. He, the billionaire, on his knees. She, the fired maid, towering in quiet command. Her voice emerged clear, unwavering, carrying over the wind like a decree. Forgiveness isn't free, Mr. Harrington. I'll accept your apology, but on my terms. She paused, letting the words sink in, her chin lifting, eyes locking on his upturned face. Alexander nodded eagerly, snowflakes melting on his lashes, his breath hitching. Anything, whatever it takes. His hands clasped together, pleading, the cold biting his exposed skin. But he didn't move. Eleanor's terms came firm, each word a building block for change. I won't return as your maid, scrubbing floors invisible again. I'll come back as an advisor, reforming your company from the inside. She gestured broadly, as if encompassing the city beyond the park. New rules. Support black workers. Fair wages. Anti-bias training. Partnerships with unions like Bolden's Legacy. And start a fund for civil rights. Scholarships. Legal aid for domestic workers facing what I did today. Her voice gained heat, fueled by decades of swallowed injustices, her fist clenching slightly at her side. The men nearby nodded approvingly, one whispering, That's right, make 'em pay. Victoria's face lit with approval, her gloved hand touching Eleanor's arm in solidarity, a bridge across generations. Alexander's eyes widened, the scope dawning. Reform the company? My empire. But she's right. Blood demands it. He bowed his head lower, the snow soaking his collar, voice muffled. Yes, all of it. I'll make it happen. But Eleanor wasn't done, her stance widening, claiming the space. And personally, you kneel now, but prove it. Join the fund's board, learn your father's story, march if needed. No more blindness. She extended her hand, not in submission but command, pulling him up if he agreed. Alexander hesitated a fraction, the inversion hitting home. She dictates now. Me, following her lead. Then with a shuddering breath, he took her hand, rising unsteadily, but as he did, he dropped back to one knee deliberately, a voluntary submission. I agree. On my knees, I swear it. Victoria's tears fell freely now, freezing on her cheeks, her voice breaking with pride. That's my son, finally seeing. She stepped forward, embracing them both awkwardly in the snow, her arms encircling like an unexpected hero, sealing the pact. The wind died momentarily as if the park itself held its breath, the lamps casting a warm halo around the trio. Eleanor's grip on Alexander's hand tightened briefly, a silent seal. Power flipped, relationship redefined, her terms the new foundation. Alexander stood fully, brushing snow from his knees, his face transformed. Regret etched deep, but resolve flickering in his eyes. Advisor? Fund? It'll cost millions, shake the board. But it's right. He nodded at Victoria, the revelation's weight shifting from burden to purpose. Eleanor retrieved her photo, tucking it away, her expression softening to cautious hope. The men applauded softly from the shadows, one calling, "About time!" As the group turned toward Victoria's car, the snow falling gentler now, blanketing the park in tentative peace. Victoria ushered them in, her voice commanding the driver. Home, all of us. The door shut with a solid thunk, the engine purring to life, leaving the bench empty, the inversion complete. Eleanor no longer the victim, but the architect of change. Victoria the unexpected catalyst. Alexander the humbled follower. Alexander slammed the conference room door open, his fist clenched around a stack of legal documents. Board members shifted in their seats, ties straightened hastily, eyes darting as he strode to the head of the table. We're changing everything. Now, he declared, voice cutting sharp, no preamble. He slapped the papers down, the thud echoing off the walls. Eleanor stood beside him, chin high, her hands steady as she adjusted the microphone clipped to her blouse. No maid's uniform now, just a tailored suit, her presence commanding the room's attention. Victoria flanked her other side, arms crossed, her glare silencing a murmuring executive mid-sentence. Listen up, Alexander barked, pointing at the projected screen flashing Bolden Legacy Fund. This fund launches today. Millions poured in. Scholarships for Black domestic workers, legal aid against unfair firings, partnerships with unions. He jabbed a finger at Eleanor. She's leading it. Advisor to the board, full authority. Eleanor's voice followed, firm and direct. No more invisible labor. We reform policies, mandatory bias training, wage audits, hiring from communities like mine. She locked eyes with a skeptical VP, her stare unyielding. Deny it, and you're out. The executive swallowed hard, nodding quickly. Alexander paced, his steps quick, handing out folders. Sign these. Commit now. Pens scratched across paper, the sound of compliance filling the air. Victoria leaned in, her hand gripping Alexander's shoulder. Your father's fight lives here. No hiding anymore. Alexander nodded, his jaw set, pushing a button to wire the first transfer. $10 million flashing on the screen. Executives exchanged glances, one whispering, "This shakes the whole company." Eleanor stepped forward, projecting a slide of union stats. We start with audits, every department, no exceptions. She clicked through, highlighting disparities. Lower pay for Black staff, ignored complaints. Fix it or face lawsuits. Alexander's phone buzzed, social media alerts flooding in. He held it up. Look, it's already viral. Tweet scrolled, Billionaire's redemption, fires Maid, then funds civil rights. Kosher Harrington change. Likes surged, comments pouring. Finally, accountability. Eleanor scrolled her own device, retweeting a post from a former worker. Eleanor's leading? About time. Union strong. Shares multiplied, hashtags trending. Doa, bold legacy. Doa, listen to the unseen. Board members fidgeted, one standing to object. This costs too much. Alexander cut him off, slamming his palm on the table. Cost? Try injustice. He turned to Eleanor. Your call. She pointed at the door. You're dismissed. The man gathered his things, exiting red-faced, the power flip evident. Eleanor dictating, Alexander enforcing. Victoria smiled faintly, her nod approving. The meeting wrapped with handshakes, executives filing out, whispers of game changer trailing. Alexander turned to Eleanor, voice low. This is just the start. She met his gaze. Yes, and you listen now. Victoria clasped their hands. Strength and truth. Phones lit up again. More shares, a news alert. Harrington's U-turn, from firing to funding rights. Comments flooded. Hope for change. Inspired. Donating now. Eleanor addressed a virtual town hall next, camera rolling. We're building equity. Viewers tuned in, like climbing. Alexander watched from the side, his posture relaxed for the first time. Victoria tweeted, proud, legacy reclaimed. Replies exploded, real redemption. The fund site crashed from traffic, donations pouring in. Eleanor's inbox filled, thank you, finally seen. Alexander pulled Eleanor aside post-call. Your terms met. She nodded. And more. Victoria joined, her embrace tight. We recognize the hidden now. The trio stood united, phones buzzing endlessly, society shifting, hope igniting through screens. Alexander's final tweet, listen, change. Retweets soared, satisfaction rippling outward. Eleanor's leadership solidified in weeks. Workshops launched, workers voicing grievances directly. One session, a young black cleaner stood. Felt invisible, now heard. Eleanor gripped her hand. That's the power. Alexander observed, his nods affirming. No commands issued. Victoria funded anonymously, her checks arriving weekly. Social media amplified. Influencers shared stories. Ya unseen, no more trending globally. A viral video. Eleanor speaking at a rally, crowd cheering. Strength isn't power, it's listening to hidden legacies. Comments, moved to tears, sharing. Donations hit millions, partnerships with unions forming. Alexander's board adapted, profits dipping, short-term but morale soaring. One evening, Eleanor reviewed impact reports. Alexander pouring coffee, roles reversed. Satisfied? He asked. She smiled faintly. Starting to? Victoria entered, document in hand. More funding approved. Their embrace sealed it. Change embedded. Society echoing the shift. The story spread wider. Podcasts dissected. Articles praised. From park bench to boardroom, one headline read. Followers messaged, gave me hope, fighting my own battles. Eleanor's response, keep listening. Alexander retweeted, his transformation complete. In a quiet moment, Eleanor held her photo frame, whispering to it. We did it. Alexander overheard, nodding silently. Victoria added, legacy honored. The fund grew, lives touched, satisfaction blooming, hope a tangible force rippling through networks, binding the unseen. In the end, this story reminds us that true strength isn't in wielding power, but in listening deeply and acknowledging the hidden legacies that shape us all, turning blindness into empathy and injustice into lasting change. What about you? Share your thoughts or a similar story in the comments below. Your voice could inspire someone else. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.